Hello and welcome to another episode of the BSN podcast. Today is Friday, August 26th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far today and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It was a very exciting night last night in the world of sports, specifically baseball. You had the Yankees and Mets both getting dominant victories. Yankees over the A's 13-4, Mets over the Rockies 3-1. Jameson Taillon and Jacob deGrom both do what they need to do. Both go 6 strong innings. And it was a great performance last night for both the Yankees and the Mets. And for the Yankees, they continue to win. They now have 4 straight victories. And last night was kind of one of those beatdowns you would expect, one of those, beatdowns that you wanted. It's the A's. They're not good. They're one of the worst teams in baseball. In fact, I think they have the second worst record in all of baseball. So it's like, you were just expecting that to happen. That was something that should happen. The Yankees took care of business, the good old-fashioned beatdown. And, now they'll get back in action today. Same thing with the Mets, looking to bounce back after the Subway Series loss. And, they get, look to take care of business again today. And both New York teams kind of still on track here. So, for the Yankees, and I keep saying this, I went on my rant on my Bubs Talking Baseball podcast that I do every Sunday on Apple Podcasts, and I went on my rant about the Yankees. And since that, they're 4-0. They're also 4-0 since Aaron Boone slammed on the table. So they have done a lot of good things since Aaron Boone slammed on the table, and they've done a lot of good things since Yankee fans have been angry. They've now won 4 straight, and they're starting to show you, again, things that they did earlier in the year. Beating down bad teams, beating the bad, just in general, beating up on the bad teams. Taking care of business when you have runners on. Good pitching, all those things the Yankees did so well early in the year, and they haven't done well recently. So it was good to see another win last night. And again, it's the A's. You should beat them up. That's what the Yankees did, 13-4 victory. So that was good to see, especially with the news of Nasty Nestor going down. I think that's mainly just a rest. We'll see. I don't think it's going to be anything major. But yeah, so Yankees get the win, Mets do as well. And for both of them, Game 2 of the 4-game set for the Yankees is today, and Game 2 of a 4-game set for the Mets as well is today. So a lot more baseball coming up tonight as well. You also had some football on last night, so that was good too. A pretty good night last night of sports. All right, so let's get to the topics for today's podcast. As I mentioned yesterday and throughout this week, it was only a matter of time until I do my fantasy football preview, so I figured why not make today a little bit of a football Friday. We will do my fantasy football preview. I'm in 3 leagues this year. I have 1 draft down in my 1 league on Sunday. I got another draft. So that will be my second draft of the 3 leagues that I'm in. I'm sure many of you, fantasy football is starting to ramp up, so I feel like this is a good time. It's week 3 of the preseason. A lot of times people do it once the preseason's done, once, with the injury, with the high injury risk of, preseason injuries happening, being more out of the way. A lot more people do it during, during preseason week 3 or after preseason week 3. So I'm going to break things down. Do what I do every year, give you the top 5 at each position, running backs, receiver, tight ends, quarterbacks, defenses, and I'll also give you some sleepers and just other players, kind of look out for as you get ready for your fantasy football draft. And as you know, every Friday, my Football Friday podcast, I do fantasy football advice, preview. So I preview and get you ready for the week ahead, Sunday, Monday, and all that good stuff. Start them, sit them, all that. That will be during the season. But for now, fantasy football preview, give you some advice as you head into your drafts, as a lot of the drafts are starting up this week and into next week as well. And fantasy football is really starting to heat up here as we get closer and closer. Today, 2 weeks from today, will be our first Football Friday of the season. From that point on, you'll be talking football every Friday until the Super Bowl, basically. So, going to be a lot of football coming up. Exciting. We'll get to that. Then we'll get to Denzel Mims and his trade request. Yes, breaking news went down yesterday. Jet receiver Denzel Mims has requested a trade. This really doesn't come by any surprise, really. I think we all kind of expected something of this coming, whether it was him building up his trade value, then the Jets trading him just, on its own without a request. Him kind of wanting to be released. There was clear frustration that he wasn't getting starting reps, and there was clear frustration he wasn't getting enough playing time. I view this as a win for both sides. I'll tell you why. I'll get into it and what the Jets could get back for Denzel Mims. So we'll get to that later on. And we'll also finish things off with the New York sports update as always. Yankees Game 2 of a 4-game set in Oakland against the A's. And Game 2 of a 4-game set at Citi Field, Mets Rockies tonight. So a lot to look forward to tonight as well. And going into the weekend as we will wrap up another week of sports here today. All right, with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get into it. So like I mentioned in the open, fantasy football, this is the time of year. It's August 26th today. So, this is the time of year, preseason week 3. A lot of times people do the drafts. That's the smart thing, to avoid the injuries. With all the injuries going on, you don't want to draft a guy, then him get injured, and then, your team being done. If you draft a high-end running back and that running back gets hurt, well, now you're in a bad situation. So, this is a lot of the time of the year where, you get these fantasy drafts and all that stuff, and I figure this is a good week. Make today a little bit of a football Friday. Next week, there will be no football on. It's kind of just a bye week for the entire league. And then the week after that, it'll be football Friday. It'll be the first game on Thursday, less than 13 days away until we got ourselves a football game. That will be Thursday night, Rams, Bills, week 1. So should be good for that. It's a lot of exciting. So excitement all around for football coming up here. And we're going to get into it. We're going to go right into it here because we have a lot to get to. So I did my fantasy draft for my one league. I'm the owner of 2 leagues. I'm in one league. So I did my draft for one league, and I'll just read you my team really quickly here. So I got my quarterback is Aaron Rodgers, running back Dalvin Cook. My other running back's David Montgomery. It's a 2-receiver, 2-running back league. I know some leagues have 3 receivers. Whatever you're in, 2-receiver, 2-running back league. That's what I'm in. My 2 receivers are Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin. My tight end is Darren Waller. My flex is J.K. Dobbins. My defense is Colts defense. And my kicker is Graham Gano. So that's my starting lineup. There is some questionable. That's as of right now, week 1. It could change. It's funny when you look at your week 1 lineup and then you look at your lineup in week 5 or 6, it's completely different. Injuries, bye weeks, all that stuff start to kick in. Things change really fast. And then your bench, my bench is Adam Thielen, Elijah Moore, Devin Singletary, Robert Woods, Michael Carter. I did take a backup quarterback, Kirk Cousins, and Jahan Dotson. So that's my bench. So that is my team, and there's 2 IR spots in this league. So that's a PPR league, and I'm going to be kind of gauging it off of that. These numbers, how I rank these guys is also a little bit off of PPR. It's also off of, normal. If you're not in a PPR league, is normal. My last year was my first year doing PPR. I love it. I think PPR is the best league. I think that's the best way to do it, the best stat thing. That's just my opinion. But anyway, let's get into it. So we're going to start with running backs. We're going to start with running backs, then kind of go to tight ends, or go to receivers, then tight ends, and then quarterbacks, and then we'll finish off with defenses. I kind of went, what you should pick first, second, third, fourth, fifth. I think your running back should be first, your receivers should be second, your tight end should be third, and your quarterback should be not your last pick, but out of those 3. I think my way of drafting, the way I do it is I like to go running back number 1. I like to go running back, receiver, running back, receiver. Now, it does depend on where you are in the draft, because if you are in the 7th or 8th, 9th area, it's interesting because you're in a spot where, not a great, a running back that might be there in the 2nd round that's good, it could be an option, but a really solid receiver could be there that's probably not in the 2nd round. So could you take a guy later, a good receiver later on, and then hope that running back falls to you? Then you kind of go receiver, running back, and then see where it is. I like to go, if I get the right pick, running back, receiver, tight end, then you look for a quarterback. That's personally how I like to do it. Then you go flex and then bench, and you kind of go kicker, defense as your last 2 picks. That's what I like to do. Everybody does it differently. Quarterback should not be drafted first round, though. That's how I see it. So let's get into the top 5 running backs. Jonathan Taylor, I think, is number 1. He's going to have a big year. I think he's number 1. I think he's kind of the he's kind of the undisputed, number 1 guy. I think everybody kind of agrees with that. Number 2, Derrick Henry. Number 3, Austin Eckler. Number 4, I have Christian McCaffrey. And then rounding out the list, number 5, I have Dalvin Cook. And I like Dalvin Cook a lot. I took him in my fantasy league. I actually took him over Kamara. I think he's just a great player when he's healthy. Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler, I don't think you can go wrong with either. If you have the number 2 overall pick and you're trying to figure out whether to pick between, most likely if Jonathan Taylor goes number 1, if you're trying to pick between Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler, I don't think you can go wrong with either. You could always look at the fact that Derrick Henry's going to get a lot of carries this year if the quarterback spot struggles. If Tannehill struggles and Malik Willis gets some time, they could rely heavily on the run game this year. So do you rely on a lot of carries, a lot of opportunities for Henry? Eckler's a guy where they also have a very, potent passing game. He's very good in the passing game, though. Eckler can do both. He's a good he's a good receiving running back. He's also a very good back out of the backfield. So you could look at that both ways. I don't think you can go wrong with either Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler. The reason why I put Henry at number 2 is because he's just a freak of nature. He's just a safe bet. Like Austin Eckler, he's a guy that could have a breakout year this year. Do you go with that, or do you go with the safe bet where you know you're going to get production? Health's a little bit of a concern, but when healthy, you know you're going to get production. That would be the Derrick Henry. So it's kind of, where do you go? Do you go for the shiny player that could have the shiny new car type player that could have a breakout year like an Austin Eckler? Or do you go with a guy that's is going to be consistent, you know what his production is, and you go with a guy like a Derrick Henry? It's kind of your choice. I don't think you can go wrong with either. A lot of leagues have Austin Eckler going number 2. I think then number 3 would probably be Henry. My biggest thing is people still say, do you take Christian McCaffrey number 1? I wouldn't. He's just been injured. When he's healthy, he's very good, but he's only been healthy for a couple games these past 2 seasons. So if you want him healthy for a week or 2, that's great. If he's not healthy for the next 15, 16 weeks, well, that's a problem. So that's how I view that. I think your safest option, number 1, is definitely Taylor, and I think Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler is 2, 3. And even you can make the argument that Dalvin Cook could be ahead of CMC. I just think Christian McCaffrey, the health is a big issue with me. I mean, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And if you got a running back that can't stay healthy, any player in your fantasy team that can't stay healthy, you're going to be in a tough spot for the rest of the year. So, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, again, Henry, Eckler, you can't go wrong with either if you got the number 2 or 3 pick and either of them fall, because you could see Cooper Kupp going early too, and then Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey. I think Dalvin Cook's probably a safer bet over McCaffrey. Do you want to go off of breakout? I mean, Christian McCaffrey, when he's healthy, he's one of the best running backs in football. He probably is the best, but he has to be able to stay healthy. That's the big thing. That's why he's falling down draft boards. Because you could have the best running back in football. If he's playing 3 games, not going to do you anything. You might win 3 games and that's it. Then you're going to have a hole in your roster for the rest of the year. So that's how I view that. You go to the top 5 receivers. Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Devonte Adams. I think you also got to put on this list Deebo Samuel. I think he's, again, just a phenomenal player, doing it both out of the backfield and running. He's another really, really solid guy. I actually took Deebo, so that's why, I kind of just threw him on here. Cooper Kupp's, definitely, he's the inevitable first receiver off the board. I think everybody kind of knows that. Coming off a year in which, the receiving record and all that stuff, a breakout year, you expect him to have another big season. He's a very solid option. Again, similar to the running backs, I don't think you can go wrong with either Justin Jefferson or Stephon Diggs. The receivers this year are very, very deep. They are. You look at the receivers, you even go down to someone like the tier 4 receivers, where you still have guys like, Chris Godwin, you still have guys like Allen Robinson, I think a lot of people are excited about, a guy like a Gabriel Davis. Even when you go deep, 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 running backs, I've always said this, aren't deep. The running back position in fantasy football is not deep at all. The receiver position is very, very, very deep. And this year especially with some of the high end, you even go to some like the tier 3 guys. You got guys like Mike Williams. You got guys like Keenan Allen. You got guys like Terry McLaurin on there. So, again, if you don't end up, and I think a lot of people focus on that, if you don't end up with a Justin Jefferson or if you don't end up with a Jamar Chase, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world, because you go down to the lower end, there is so much good talent at the receiver position that is still very good. So I look at the top 5 of Kupp, Jefferson, Diggs, Jamar Chase, Devonte Adams, Deebo Samuel as well. You could throw him in. You could make the argument Deebo Samuel is number 2 just because of the pure ability that he has to run and catch. He could do both. So he's a guy that, he could do just about everything. You could put him at number 2, only behind Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp's number 1. I think it has to be. It's not fair if you don't pick Cooper Kupp, with the first pick in the receiver, for a receiver. Again, like I said, I think Diggs is a solid option. A lot of people like Jamar Chase a lot. Do you take Jamar Chase over Diggs? Here's my big thing. Diggs and Josh Allen just have that connection. It's so good. And I like Diggs a lot. I also like Jamar Chase a lot. They're all there. You can't go wrong with any of them. Devonte Adams, too, is another guy that's also high up on the list. I have him at number 5 here. I think Diggs, Cooper Kupp, could you go Diggs number 2 after Cooper Kupp? You very well could. The receiver is an interesting spot, because if you're in a 12-team league and you're at 8 or 9 or 10, and you have, you're in a later pick, and, Jonathan Taylor, Henry, Eckler, CMC, Dalvin Cook, all off the board, and maybe even a guy like a Kamara and Mixon all off the board, maybe Chubb too. Those are the first 6, 7 picks, and you're at 8 or 9, and Cooper Kupp, is off the board. I then would probably go receiver. You could go running back too, but I think you have a possibility of maybe getting, even like a Najee Harris who's up on a lot of boards, but maybe him falling a little bit. Could he fall possibly? You get him in the second round, take a really good receiver. Whether that's a Stephon Diggs, whether that's a Justin Jefferson, the receiver spot's loaded. You really can't go wrong with any of these guys. I think Devonte Adams, you might see a slight production drop just because of the fact that there's a lot of talent, in Vegas with Darren Waller as well, going to be getting a lot of carries. Hunter Renfrow too is a guy. I'm not saying he's going to steal all the opportunities from Devonte Adams, but even Devonte Adams mainly in Green Bay was the main target. I mean, geez. You had really no tight end. Robert Tonyan was terrible last year. Can't really stay healthy. You really didn't have any, Lazard, sure, a couple guys here and there. You had a couple guys, but you really couldn't, not much. It was basically Devonte Adams. Now there's Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow's a solid option. Devonte Adams, you had him into the mix. So I don't know if I'd view Devonte Adams as like a number 2 right now. I would definitely say he's definitely top 5, top 6, top 7. But if you came down to it, I think I would take Diggs over like a Devonte Adams. I would personally take like a Justin Jefferson over Adams. So that's how I view the receiver room. And again, I don't think you can go wrong with Deebo Samuel either. If you take Deebo Samuel number 12, that's not bad. He could run and he could catch. He could do just about everything. And George Kittle's a very good tight end, but he's had some injury concerns. So that means more opportunities for Deebo as well. So the receiver this year are very, very stacked. You can't go wrong with any of them in my opinion. So you go to the tight ends. I ranked it Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Dalton Schultz. Kyle Pitts is also on there. I think he's a guy too that you could very well throw in there. My only concern with Kyle Pitts is look at the quarterback situation in Atlanta. You're going to be rolling with Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder. And Desmond Ridder's a rookie. We got to see what he's all about, but most likely it's going to be Marcus Mariota. Do you trust him? And I know Pitts is going to get a lot of looks. He's going to get a lot of action. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. But do you really trust those quarterbacks to produce at a high level, get the ball to Pitts at a consistent rate? That's my only concern. That would be my only thing with Kyle Pitts this year. If there was one concern with him, he's athletic, he's very good, catch. He's a phenomenal tight end. He's got all the tools. One of the most athletic players we've ever seen come out of the draft, obviously out of Florida. We all know what he's capable of. My biggest concern is the quarterback situation in Atlanta. Because when you look at these other tight ends, Travis Kelce's got Patrick Mahomes. Darren Waller's got Derek Carr. Mark Andrews got Lamar Jackson. George Kittle's got Trey Lance, who, I would take Trey Lance over Marcus Mariota. I would. And Dalton Schultz has got Dak Prescott. So they all got very solid quarterbacks, right? Kyle Pitts, he's rolling with Mariota and Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder's a rookie. It's an interesting spot. So that's my only concern with Kyle Pitts. Like him a lot, but if there was a concern to hold you back, I would definitely take like a Kelce, Kittle, Waller, all them over Kyle Pitts. I would. I like Kyle Pitts. I think he's just on the outside of top 5 just because of the fact of the quarterback play that he's got in Atlanta. That's the only issue. Now, you do question with Kelce a little bit. They got rid of Tyreek Hill. Defenses are going to be very highly focused on Kelce. And I do understand that, and that is something to take into consideration. Here's my thing with that. I get that argument. But I don't like, I get the argument, but I don't like it a ton because, people make it seem like Kelce's not going to produce at all. Like, Kelce's still going to produce. Even without Tyreek Hill maybe being as a distraction, another weapon, he's still going to produce. It's not like his production is just going to drop off the side of a cliff. He's still going to produce. So, I still would trust Kelce. I mean, I think, maybe if you want to go a little bit of a safer bet, go with Waller, especially PPR, a lot of catches, you could go that because you got a lot of other weapons there. In Kansas City, you're hoping that Sky Moore becomes something. You're hoping that Juju Smith-Schuster can just do normal things, not make TikToks on the field and play at a high rate. And you're hoping that Travis Kelce can have a good year. So there is a little bit maybe more luck on your side with Kelce, or you have to get a little bit more lucky with Kelce. Just the fact that, maybe some other guys start producing so the defense has to spread out and look at other guys. Darren Waller, I think, with Devonte, a lot of eyes are going to be on Devonte Adams. A lot of coverage is going to be on Devonte Adams. I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for Waller. Also in PPR, he's a very good tight end. Gets a lot of catches, a ton of catches, gets a lot of looks. So that's my top 5 tight ends. Tight end spot's pretty stacked too, because you hear that Dallas Goedert's having a good camp. So he's another guy that's like right on the outside of the top 5, looking at 6, 7 possibly. You even go down a little bit and you look at a guy like you even go down a little bit, and a guy like a Freiermuth from Pittsburgh. He is working with a rookie quarterback, but a guy that, has some potential. So is he a guy that you can look later rounds? Cole Kmet from Chicago. It's definitely the tight end room. You definitely gotta get right. You gotta get right. But it's not a make or break your draft, right? But the tight ends are definitely, they're definitely a good. There's a good solid 8 or 9, 10 of them, and then it kind of gets a little iffy after that. So tight ends are big. Then you go to top 5 quarterbacks, and I got Josh Allen number 1, Patrick Mahomes number 2, Herbert number 3. I actually have Joe Burrow at 4, and I got Lamar Jackson at 5. And I highlighted here, I put Rodgers. So I took Rodgers. Look, here's my thing with Rodgers, and this is why I took Kirk Cousins. He doesn't have Devonte Adams anymore. He's working with a lot of inexperienced receivers that really he has not played much with. He's relying on a lot of other guys. Does that concern you a little bit? Maybe. Do I think Rodgers is going to have a terrible year now? I don't think so. I do think, in my opinion, he's back-to-back MVPs, going to be a Hall of Famer. We all know what Rodgers can do. If you're going to take Aaron Rodgers, I would recommend drafting a backup. Sometimes you don't draft backups. I would recommend drafting a backup if you're going to take Rodgers. Just because of the possible chance that he has a really bad year and, he's just not the same quarterback. Because on Fantasy Pros, if you look at their list, Rodgers is in the tier 3. Past years, he's been up there in tier 1, possibly the best fantasy option out there. Back-to-back MVPs. So here's my thing with Rodgers. If you're going to take Rodgers, I would recommend taking a backup just as a safety blanket, just in case if he really falls off without Devonte Adams. Right? That's how I see it. I would not look, I took Rodgers. And look, there is a little bit of a risk factor that goes into it. But at the end of the day, he's a veteran. He's back-to-back MVPs. I think he's going to find a way to make it work. Maybe his production's not as high as it was with Adams, but he's still going to be a very solid quarterback. I don't think he's going to fall off the side of a cliff. I don't think he's going to just fall off the face of the earth and you're never going to, his production's going to drop and he's going to have more interceptions and touchdowns. But if he does start to struggle and, they start losing and he starts, a little bit struggle there, it wouldn't be bad to have a backup quarterback. It wouldn't be. So that's how I view it. So if you're going to take Rodgers, I would recommend taking a safety blanket backup. That's what I did. I took Kirk Cousins as my backup just in case. Just in case. If Rodgers struggles and things aren't going well, right? I have Josh Allen number 1. Look, he's got Stephon Diggs. He's Diggs. Isaiah McKenzie's having a good camp. He's got a solid tight end in Knox, who a lot of people believe he's a guy that a lot of people believe is a solid mid-rounder. Dawson Knox is a guy to look out for as a tight end, too. So he has a ton of weapons. You look at Mahomes, too. I think the only reason Mahomes is a little bit down from Allen in past years, it's been Mahomes basically number 1, is just because he's without Tyreek Hill, and that's a legitimate question. How is he going to perform without Tyreek Hill? Justin Herbert as well. Again, I don't think you can go wrong with either. Do you take Herbert, more weapons around him, or do you take Patrick Mahomes with just the the better track record and all that stuff? Because if you look at Herbert, he's loaded with weapons. He's got a good running back. Got a solid got a couple solid tight ends. Got very good receivers. He's loaded with weapons around him. Very good offensive line as well. Mahomes he doesn't have his number 1 threat anymore. Now he's got to rely on a guy like a Juju. What about rookie Sky Moore? What can he do? Then Travis Kelce as well. Can he continue to produce at a high rate, kind of being the number 1 dude? So, Patrick Mahomes, he's not gonna. I don't think it's set. Like I said, maybe a safer option would be Herbert, but I don't think you can go wrong with either there. I put Burrow over Lamar. Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray on this list, and Jalen Hurts. I like Joe Burrow a lot. Look, he's got T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase. He's got Mixon as well. They revamped that offensive line. Went to the Super Bowl last year. I think a lot of people are kind of just burying Joe Burrow. They're talking about guys like, Stafford, Rodgers obviously, and Wilson and Brady. It's like Joe Burrow is a golden guy. I think Joe Burrow is a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I think he has the potential to be. That's how I see it. I think he has the potential to be a top 5 fantasy producer. Look at the weapons around him. Jamar Chase, I have him number 4 on my list. A lot of people have him up there number 1 and 2. So he's a guy that Burrow is going to be thrown to one of the best fantasy wide receivers. So I think Burrow's got all the weapons. And again, you have to realize they revamped the offensive line. Some of these guys lost weapons. Burrow only got better around him. The offensive line was the biggest concern with Burrow. And now they revamped that. It's a lot better. And I think you should expect a lot of production. So I like Burrow a lot. I think a lot of people are kind of just going over him. They're like, oh, let's look at Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson in Denver. Dak Prescott's. Everybody's in love with Trey Lance. Joe Burrow is being kind of, I don't want to say slept on, but people are kind of just forgetting about him. They're looking at all the other quarterbacks. Burrow is a guy that really still very high on my list. He's a guy you can't go wrong with either. And like I said, Lamar Jackson too. Is another option there as well. So you go to the defenses. I have Bills number 1, Buccaneers, Rams number 2. I don't think you can go wrong with either. Colts number 3, and Niners or Colts number 4. Niners number 5. Look, defenses, there's not a ton of thought that goes into it. I'm a big fan of streaming defenses. That's what I do. I look at the week 1 opponents. So Colts are playing the Texans week 1. I picked up the Colts. So that's a lot of times what I do. Look at the week 1 opponents, see who they are playing, and roll with it. That's how I see it. I think a lot of times you stream defenses. There's throughout the year, teams are going to separate themselves amongst, who's good, who's bad. So you always try to find the defenses that are playing the really bad teams. And that's kind of what you see here, the stream defenses. And a couple sleepers, guys like Michael Carter from the Jets. I think he's a sleeper. I'm a Jet fan, I know, but I don't think you can go wrong with him. I think a lot of people are hyping up Breece Hall, and I think that's rightfully so. But I think a lot of people are acting like Michael Carter's carries are just going to die down. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to get a lot of action, both of them. A.J. Dillon, another guy from the Packers. Dobbins is a guy that I have in my starting lineup. I like him a lot. I think he's a very good running back. I know a lot of people coming off the injury, are a little risky. Early in the career, is that a little bit of a risky pick? I like Dobbins a lot. I think he's going to play a very big role. I think the way that Ravens do things with the running game, I think Dobbins is going to be utilized a lot. So I think Dobbins is a guy that you're not going to see much drop off in production. Adam Thielen's a guy that's been a little bit slept on this year as well. He's a guy that's like, everybody's talking about Justin Jefferson. Everybody's talking about Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins' breakout year. Thielen's a guy that is really like, even Irv Smith Jr. there, everybody's like, oh, maybe he could do something at the tight end spot. Thielen's a guy that's kind of gotten buried in the fantasy world. Not many people are talking about him. And I know last year was a little streaky. It was a little up and down, but that was kind of the way the Titans season was. It was up and down, up and down, up and down. And I think that's where new coach, new offense, new sense of energy. I think Thielen's going to have a big year. And Kirk Cousins is another guy too. Not so much a sleeper, but again, if you need like a safety blanket quarterback, that's who I took. Is he a starter? I don't know. I don't know if I would wait in the draft to get Kirk Cousins. But is he a safety blanket? That's what I took him for. Just in case if Rodgers does struggle without Adams, you have Kirk Cousins there. A qualified, solid, backup fantasy quarterback. That's how I view it. So, again, a couple other sleepers too. You go to like overall players. Some other sleepers, guys like, even like a Brandon Ayuk from, another receiver there. Guys like, again, like a guy like even like a Devin Singletary, backup running back, under the radar. You have him, he's a guy that could make some noise. Tony Pollard from the Cowboys, another running back there too. So there's a couple guys. A lot of people are high on the receivers in Green Bay, like Allen Lazard, because they think they're going to play a big role. Is that the case? I don't know. You go down the list, there's a lot of guys, that are definitely down on the list that are, even you look at the Kareem Hunt and the Browns. I think you're going to see a lot of him and Chubb early on because I think you're going to see a lot of him and Chubb early on because you're going to see they're not going to pass it a ton. That's how I don't think they're going to pass it a ton. But that's my perspective. That's how I see it. I don't think with Jacoby Brissett, you're not going to see much passing early on. So, but yeah, so I think Kareem Hunt, too, another guy, with the trade requests and all that, trade proposals, the trade rumors, with him requesting a trade, does he get a spot elsewhere? If not, does he play for the Browns this year? Again, he's a guy that's kind of a risky pick, but he has potential. Because if he goes elsewhere and plays well, look out. And if he stays with the Browns and they don't trade him and the whole trade thing kind of blows up, he's a guy that, could also play a role. So you'll see. Kareem Hunt's a little bit of a risky pick, but you'll see. So, yeah. So anyway, look, there's always going to be guys. It's always tough to tell. sometimes, who's the best guy to pick. I think undoubtedly number one is the inevitable has got to be Jonathan Taylor, and you go on from there. So that's my fantasy football preview. Again, I think there's a lot of good names. Again, just a quick thing. Running backs, not very deep. Go after the running backs early. Receivers, the receivers are deep this year. There's a lot of really good receivers. You go to the tight ends, another position that's not incredibly deep. You got to capitalize early on that. Quarterbacks, quarterbacks are deep. Some of the last picks of quarterbacks are Kirk Cousins. That's not terrible. So they're deep, and defenses, I recommend streaming them. And a lot of people have looked out, and a lot of people too. There's a lot of depth guys out there. Even like a David Montgomery from the Bears. He's not depth, but he's a guy too that not many people talk about from the Bears. If Justin Fields starts to struggle, you could see them rely a lot on the run game. Darnell Mooney and other guys. So there's all sorts of guys out there. Again, my fantasy team: Rodgers, Dalvin Cook, David Montgomery, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Darren Waller, J.K. Dobbins, Colt Stee, Graham Gano is my starting offense. And my bench is Thielen, Elijah Moore, Devin Singletary, Robert Woods, Michael Carter, Kirk Cousins, and Jahan Dotson. So hopefully that helped you a little bit. And I guess we shall see how the fantasy football season plays out. Super pumped up and excited for that. All right, so now we move from a little bit of fantasy football to NFL. So we go from fantasy, go to football, to another football topic here, as we are going to get to Denzel Mims today. He has requested a trade from the New York Jets, as receiver Denzel Mims has requested a trade from the Jets. And look, I've talked about Mims a lot this year throughout training camp. I don't think this was any surprise. You hear the news of Kareem Hunt, the trade stuff there. Now you hear Denzel Mims. You heard Roquan Smith a couple weeks ago. There's all types of trade stuff now that happens late in camp, depending on how camp plays out. And I think we all can agree that Denzel Mims has had a very weird training camp, a very weird career with the New York Jets in terms of his role, in terms of his playing time, in terms of his just overall production. It's been a very odd 2 years for Denzel Mims, in which in 2 years he played 20 games with the New York Jets, was not on the field very much. Even when he didn't get much action. And now he has requested a trade from the Jets. And I don't think this comes by any surprise. I think we all kind of expected this or saw this coming at some point. And again, like I mentioned in the open of the podcast, I think it was only a matter of time. But I also think does he build up his trade value during training camp and the Jets just trade him on his own without him requesting a trade? Is it something where he does request a trade, the Jets end up trading him? It's interesting to see how this whole thing was going to play out because, I think we all knew something was coming, right? Denzel Mims did not have the consistent reps in camp. He did not have the consistent playing time. He didn't have many first-team reps. He said countless times, I should be a starter. Saleh kind of said, he feels frustrated, and you could feel the frustration with Mims. He's gone to Saleh multiple times. And look, at the end of the day, he just doesn't fit. He doesn't have a place here. He doesn't have a future with the Jets. And I liked Mims a lot coming out of college. He's only 6'3", and it's not like he's massive 6'6", 6'7" receiver, but he's tall, long arms, good one-on-one, good jump ball, good deep ball threat, wins one-on-ones. A lot of that he did at Baylor, comes in, shows some promise his rookie year, goes into his second season, new coach, new system, kind of a new, franchise needed a facelift. Jets bring in a kind of a new, just a new coaching staff. Right? They replenish, bring in new guys. Mims was hoping that kind of have a breakout year too. He showed some promising things. You were hoping for him to have another big year, and he didn't. He had the food poisoning, the COVID, battled some illness, and he was kind of caught catching up last year, the entire year, to the playbook, to the scheme, and last year never really worked out. 11 games, 8 catches, 23 targets, 133 yards, and now he's requested a trade. And I don't think this comes by any surprise. And then you go into this season where he's put in a lot of work in the offseason. You had Zach Wilson fly to Arizona to throw with him. He's put in a lot of work. Learn the system, learn the playbook. Tries to come in to be this big-time player. And he's just buried on the depth chart. And I do believe that Mims has the talent to go start elsewhere. I do believe that. Whether it's I don't know if he's... I'm not saying he's going to go to the Bills and start on the Bills, but like a team with that much talent, a receiver or something. But he definitely has potential to go to a team And he could start. He could. He could definitely play a role. I mean, Mims is a lot of potential. And he's only 24 years old. This isn't like we're talking about a guy that's 29 years old, 31, 32 years old, hasn't really played much, done much at all, a lot of, high contract, and you're trying to get rid of him. No, that's not the case. Is a guy that's, rookie deal, all that stuff, only in his third year. He's got a lot of potential, looking to make a third year jump. Now, it does create a little bit of concern because our team's willing to give up a lot for a guy that's going to have to come in and in 2 weeks learn the playbook. Do the Jets trade him to a team that is a scheme fit? Do they trade him to a playbook he already knows? The big thing with Mims is he fit Adam Gaze's scheme, which is terrible, but he fit Adam Gaze's scheme because they brought him in the Gaze era, going into Gaze's second season. He doesn't really fit the LaFleur offense, West Coast type scheme that LaFleur runs. He doesn't fit that. He fits the Gaze scheme, not the LaFleur scheme. And that's the unfortunate part, is he just doesn't really fit this, and that's why he doesn't really have a role. And, look, he has a lot of talent, but is he going to play over a guy like a Corey Davis? No, I mean, when you look at the receivers that the Jets have, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios, Garrett Wilson, and the Jets like Jeff Smith a lot, especially on special teams. So there are 5 guys. Mims was maybe going to be the 6th. Now you look at it, who's going to be the 6th? Do Calvin Jackson make the roster? Do you see one of these guys that are were on the bubble now? Do they make a roster spot? That are putting together good camps? We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But now it's like, this doesn't come by much surprise because when you see all this other receiving stuff, Mims is not going to start over Berrios. He's not going to start over, Corey Davis, not going to start over Garrett Wilson, not going to start over Elijah Moore. Berrios is maybe number 2. Not going to start over those guys. He's not. And he has potential to start elsewhere. There's just a lot more talent in front of him in the Jets. That's the way it doesn't fit. So I see this as a win-win, right? Because I think it's good for Mims to go get a fresh start, and I hope he does well at a fresh start. It just didn't work out here. It didn't. He comes in, Gaze era, first year, injuries, comes back second year, has the illness and stuff, now comes into the third year. He's behind. That's kind of what, I think that's the big thing. He just got caught behind a little bit, and he's just never really able to catch up, and he's just not able to really find a role here. So I look at this as a win-win for both sides, like I mentioned. He gets a fresh start elsewhere. Jets now get to choose, all right, who's going to be that 6th guy? Who's going to be that 6th receiver? Is it Calvin Jackson? Do they, is it, I know Cager can play both, tight end, receiver. Do you use them both? What do you do there? It's interesting. It definitely is. So now you wonder, what can you get back from him? So look, he's young. He's 24 years old. He got drafted in 2020. Do I see you getting back a 10, do you get Mims back for a first-round pick? No. Second-round pick? No. I mean, after all, the Jets did get Chris Herndon for a 4th-round pick. So, do you get a guy with upside? Is a team really high on Mims to get him? It's interesting. It's very interesting. And again, he's going to his 3rd year. The only thing that could stop a team from giving up much is the fact that he's got to learn a new system in a couple weeks. Possibility of learning a new system. So, do you have him do that and then possibly waste a year or have a year where it's kind of up and down of him learning and then hope that his 4th year he makes a jump? What do you do there? It's definitely interesting. So, again, 20 games, career with the Jets, 31 catches, 67 targets, 490 yards. And you look at that draft class now for Joe Douglas in 2020, and it's ugly. And a lot of people are going to say that it's ugly, and it is. I mean, the only real 2 guys now are Bryce Hall and Braden Mann. And I mean, you could even make the argument that Jabari Zuniga's, he's had a good camp. What does he find a role? Does he find a spot on this team? We'll see when all is said and done. With the 53-man roster going into week 1, we'll see. I know Bryce Hall got burned against the Falcons and had a tough game, and it looks like Sauce's going to start over him, rightfully so. But he did have a bounce back day yesterday, an interception and stuff against the Giants in the joint practice. So we'll see how his Jet career plays out with the Jets, but. When you look at 2020 draft, it's ugly. It is. But when you look at what Douglas did, bringing in, the 2021 draft, which is looking very good, very exciting. 2022 draft looks even better. There's a lot of excitement. Another thing with Mims too is when you see them go out after they get Saleh, sign Corey Davis, draft Elijah Moore. When you see that happen, it shows you that they weren't fully sold on Mims in the first place. And then when you see them extend Berrios this offseason, go after Garrett Wilson, continue to bring in talent, which is good. It shows you Mims never really had a spot on this roster under the new regime. He just didn't. He didn't. Under this coaching staff, under this new, under Saleh and LaFleur and the LaFleur offense, he just never really fit. They found guys that did fit, Denzel Mims didn't. And I think you kind of got that feeling really over the past 2 years. Over the past year and a half now, you really got that feeling dating back to the 2021 offseason, where you got Corey Davis, you got, Elijah Moore in the draft. Getting those guys, seeing Mims kind of fall down and down and down. And then going out and, this offseason, extending Braxton Berrios and then bringing in Garrett Wilson, it was kind of like Mims just doesn't have a role, doesn't have a spot on this team. And there's been these trade, possibilities really now since the offseason. What is his future? Do you build up his trade value in training camp and preseason, then get rid of him? Does he request a trade? Do you release him? What do you do? Now we got our answer. Mims has requested a trade. And really quickly here, just to read this statement from Rob Slavin, who is his agent, Mims' agent. This was the statement from Rob Slavin. This is what it said. Again, Rob Slavin, Denzel Mims' agent, he said, it's just time. Denzel tried in good faith, but it's clear he does not have a future with the Jets. Denzel vowed to come back better than ever this offseason and worked extremely hard in the offseason to make that happen. Still, he has been given no opportunities with the starting offense to get in a groove with them. We feel at this point a trade is our only option since the Jets have told us reportedly they will not release him. Joe Douglas has always done right by Denzel, and we trust he will do everything in his power to find another team where Denzel can be a contributor. So that was from Rob Slavin, Mims' agent. And teams will definitely be interested on Mims. I don't think there's any surprise there. And we'll see what the Jets can get back for him. And we'll see if Douglas pulls the trigger and makes a move, or if this is something that kind of waits out. Do the Jets try to I don't think the Jets will repair this relationship. I think it's clear. I think it's good for both sides. No need to have a guy holding up a roster spot that doesn't want to be here. That's the big thing. So, and again, he's gotten a little bit of reps with the first team, but he hasn't done much. And I wonder that, in that Falcons game, I think that was probably about the end of it for Mims. I think that was probably the final last straw, I'm done. This isn't working. I want to go elsewhere. He was getting reps late in practice with the third, fourth team guys, and, Strevler, and he was playing with them third, fourth quarter. He was getting reps. And it was you scratch your head because you're he's still out there? Like a guy that you drafted in 2020, a guy that put in a lot of work, believes he should be a starter, and he's still playing late in the game with a lot of guys fighting for roster spots. It's definitely interesting. It really is. It's definitely interesting. And I think that was probably the last straw, the last all right, I'm done, get me out of here with Mims. So, look, both parties, you need separate. You move on. It was a tough draft. It was obviously the pick didn't work out. You move on, you forget about it, and, you got a lot of young talent now with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, and you add Corey Davis and Berrios to the mix, and the Jets like Jeff Smith a lot, and now you wonder who is going to be that sixth receiver. We'll see. So Denzel Mims has requested a trade, and now we'll see where he goes and what the Jets do. All right, so we'll get to NFL. We'll get to some NFL and then some baseball here to finish things off here on this Friday. You got Panthers, Bills today, Chargers, Saints, Seahawks, Cowboys, Raiders, Patriots. So those are your 4 games on today. And then on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern, NFL Network, Jets, Giants. Both of them come into the preseason game. This preseason game 2-0. Jets are 3-point favorites over under 38.5. That's at MetLife Stadium. And that should be good. That's our first taste of Sunday getting up. There being a football game should be exciting. So pumped up for football season. Last preseason games, and then after that, got a week off, a bye week, and then boom, it's game week. So really looking forward to it. Baseball's right in front of us, and football is right in front of us. And should I pull Boone? It's right in front of us. And then football is right there, right in front of us. And then you got baseball. That's October is going to be here before you know it. And this is the best part of the baseball season. Obviously heating up right now, so it should be good. As for baseball today, you got the Dodgers, Marlins, Phillies, Pirates, Reds, Nationals, Angels, Blue Jays, Rays, Red Sox, Tigers, Rangers, Cubs, Brewers, Diamondbacks, White Sox, Giants, Twins, Orioles, Astros, Padres, Royals, Braves, Cardinals, Guardians, Mariners. Mets, Rockies today. Mets come into this game 80-46. Rockies come into today's game 54-72. Rockies got Chad Kuhl on the mound. He's 6-7 with a 5.16 ERA. And the Mets got Chris Bassett on the mound. He's 11-7 with a 3.26 ERA. Over/under set at 8. Today, 7:10 Eastern on SNY. Yankees, A's tonight. Yankees come into tonight's game 77-48. A's come into tonight's game 46-80. 9:40 p.m. Eastern. You can find it on Prime Video. Yankees got Garrett Cole on the mound. He's 9-6 with a 3.41 ERA. And former Yankee J.P. Sears takes the mound against the A's today. He's 5-0 with a 1.93 ERA. Over/under set at 7. He obviously went over to the A's in the Frankie Montez, Lou Trevino deal, so he'll get a little action against his former team. As for fantasy baseball, I'm currently losing 223-221. So it's a real close matchup. I got Chris Bassett on the mound today. By the way, I made a roster move today. Or yesterday, I should say, and it kind of took, it officially went through today. I put Jared Walsh on the IL, and I activated Bryce Harper. So Bryce Harper's expected to be back. He was raking in his rehab assignments. Hit a home run, had a couple, I think, home run or two, I think he had a couple, and then he had a walk-off. Absolutely raking in his, with the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, I think it was. So Jared Walsh on the IL 60 day IL. Angels transferred Walsh thoracic outlet syndrome from the 10-day injury list to the 60-day IL on Thursday. So it looks like his season most likely is over. I still have him on the IL. His season's done basically. And then for Bryce Harper, Harper thumb will be reinstated from the 60-day IL Friday. Todd Zolecki of MLB.com reports. So looking forward to getting Harper back and should be good. And as for my other league, I got, my other league I'm currently winning 176-137, and today I've got Joe Musgrove on the mound. And like I said, Bassett's on the mound for the Mets today, Garrett Cole as well. I got Bassett in fantasy, so we'll see how both those guys do. And yeah, like I said, yesterday was a dominant performance for the Yankees. It was like, you needed that good performance, and Yankees continue to find ways to win, and that's good. And they're showing a lot of signs of what they were earlier in the year: scoring with runners in scoring position, defense, all that good stuff. And I think too, we beat up on the bad teams earlier in the year, and I think recently we haven't been doing that. Not that we played terrible teams, and the last series prior, really the last series we won prior to like the Mets series was against the Royals. So I can't say we haven't been beating up on the bad teams, but the teams we should beat, we weren't beating. Like, this team should beat the Rays, weren't beating them. We could beat the Blue Jays, weren't beating them. We could beat the Mariners, weren't beating them, right? So that's the frustrating part. Now you're starting to see, all right, we match up against the Mets. Hey, let's take them on. Took two against them at Yankee Stadium. You're way better than the A's. Last night showed that. So I have another dominant performance tonight. Tyone did his job. Cole, let's see it. Go out there. I mean, it's the A's. 7 scoreless. Boom. Let's see it. So, Yankees tonight against the A's, Mets as well. And a lot of baseball to look forward to over the weekend. So that will do it for another week of podcasts. As you all know, I do my Sunday Bubs Talking Baseball podcast. I will also be uploading an Into Trench with Gangrene podcast if there's any news on Mims. And also, I will definitely be doing my Jets and Giants preseason preview for that. So, look forward to all that stuff. If you're interested, that will be happening over the weekend. But as for this podcast, I'll be back in action on Monday. And, everybody enjoy your weekend. Enjoy all the sports that are on. Enjoy the final couple games of preseason before the real season, the real stuff happens, which is exciting. Enjoy all the baseball. And, as always, I will see you all back here on Monday. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.